Rain lashed against the windows of Whitmore Manor, as if the world outside wanted to hear what was happening within. Eleanor Voss had not slept, not because she had heard the noise, not because something had stirred in her. She had not slept because, for 19 years, she had learned to stay awake every night. Her stepfather, Richard Whitmore, was in that house. Sleep was a luxury, and luxuries were not for her. In the room beneath the stairs, they called it a guest room, though no guest in London had ever returned from it. Eleanor lay staring at the ceiling, clutching the only thing her mother had left her. A small brooch, silver, engraved with a single letter, V. Voss, her mother's name, Eleanor's name, not Richard Whitmore's. The study door opened and closed twice. Then the voices rose. Eleanor did not get out of bed. She did not need to listen. She could already hear it. George's voice. Her brother, or rather, her stepbrother, though Richard had never made that distinction. George was his son. Eleanor was the burden his dead wife had brought with her. £500, George said. His voice trembled. Father, £500. Tonight. Either I pay it or what? Richard's voice did not tremble. Eleanor closed her eyes. The gambling house, she thought. Again. George was 23, and in his life he had done 3 things well: being born, smiling, and losing. At the card tables, at the races, even when tossing a coin, he lost. Eleanor no longer condemned him for it. Condemnation required energy. There is no £500, Richard said. But I said there isn't. Silence. Then Richard spoke again. His voice had lowered, and that lowering chilled Eleanor to the bone. Richard was most dangerous when he was quiet. But there is a solution. Eleanor rose at that moment. She did not even know why. A feeling. Instinct, perhaps. She had spent 19 years learning to recognize Richard Whitmore's solutions. She stepped into the corridor, barefoot, silent. She moved closer to the door, only to listen. Only. The Duke of Ashford, Richard said. James Ashford. The largest of the men your creditors answer to. But you have never spoken to Ashford himself. Ashford? There was a tremor in George's voice. Father, that man is the solution. What do you mean? A slow breath. He wanted Eleanor already. Last month at the gathering. He looked at her. I noticed. Eleanor's hand gripped the doorframe. He looked, George said slowly. And because he looked, young, healthy, passably pretty. Ashford wants a wife. Society knows it. He will not receive a better offer than mine. She brings a name with her. But in exchange for the debt, you mean you've... I will, Richard said. And his voice was so level that Eleanor almost believed the sentence normal. Take her to Ashford tomorrow morning. The debt is erased. Perhaps we are even paid something on top. Eleanor stepped away from the door. 1, 2, 3 steps. She entered her room, closed the door, sat on the bed. She looked at the brooch in her hand. Silver, the letter Vi. She tried to remember her mother's face. As always, it came blurred. She had lost her at 8. Smallpox. London had been bitterly cold that winter. The doctor had come too late, and Richard had cared too little. She squeezed her eyes shut to cry. No tears came. Good, she thought. There was no time. She stood, opened her wardrobe, took out her best dress, which meant only that it was less worn than the others. She would dress early in the morning. She would do her own hair. The girl Richard Whitmore brought to the Duke of Ashford would at least look proper. She was doing this for her mother. Her mother had always stood straight. Eleanor remembered that. Not the blurred face, but the posture, the shoulders. She had never bowed, not even before Richard. A woman's only possession is her dignity, Eleanor, she had once said. No one can take it, unless you allow them. Eleanor tightened her grip on the brooch. 500 pounds. That was the price of her brother's debt. Hers had not yet been named. By morning, Eleanor was ready before Richard knocked. When he entered, that familiar calculating look in his eyes, a face carrying neither apology nor explanation, Eleanor stopped him at the door. She asked a single question. Her voice did not tremble. Her eyes did not burn. She only wanted to know, how much did you sell me for? Richard paused for a moment. Then he shrugged, as though this were a matter of accounts. 500, in exchange for the debt being cleared. Eleanor nodded. Without another word, she stepped past him and left. Reasonable, Richard called after her. Good. Eleanor did not hear, or rather, she chose not to. Ashford House stood in Mayfair, as though built of stone, iron, and silence. As she entered, Eleanor did not see the building. She saw her reflection in the glass door. Neat hair, straight shoulders, pale face. She looked like her mother. For the first time, she saw it clearly. The receiving room was large and cold, not from the season, but by design. James Ashford stood by the fireplace, his back to the door. When Richard saw him, he bowed at once. That repulsive, familiar bow. My lord, as I promised, name your price, Ashford said. He did not turn. Sir, what do you want for the girl? Speak plainly. Richard cleared his throat. The debt erased. 500 pounds. Ashford turned and laughed. A short, sharp, cold laugh, as though Richard had delivered the wrong line on a stage. 500, he said. A horse costs more than that, Whitmore. Richard flushed. My lord, the girl is of good family. Her mother's name is Voss. Very well. A brief silence. The debt is erased. Richard bowed again. You are most generous, my lord, truly. Ashford was not listening. He was looking at Eleanor. Eleanor looked back, neither bowing nor lowering her gaze. A level, composed, measuring look, as if she were not observing the man who had bought her, but calculating the winter ahead. Ashford's eyes narrowed slightly. Interesting, he thought, though nothing of it showed on his face. Whitmore, he said, without taking his eyes off Eleanor. You will be shown out. Sir? The girl will remain. You will leave. Richard left. The door closed. They were alone. And as the November rain struck the glass, Eleanor Voss realized that for the first time in her life, she stood with nothing to hide behind. No stepfather. No corridor's shadow. Not even a reason strong enough to hold back tears. Ashford did not speak. He simply looked. Eleanor looked back. And only one thought passed through her mind. I will not forgive you. She did not say it. Not yet. But she carved the day she would into memory. Mrs. Holt, the head housekeeper of Ashford House, was a woman of 60, with a granite face and words measured before they were spoken. When she received Eleanor at the door, she looked her up and down, a single glance, swift and complete. Then she turned. Come. Eleanor picked up her case. No one had reached for it anyway. The corridor was long. Their steps echoed. Mrs. Holt spoke as she walked, without turning, without raising her voice. His lordship takes breakfast at 8. You will eat at past, not in the dining room, in the small sitting room. His lordship dines with guests in the evening. You may eat or not, as you please, but you will not come down to the dining room. Eleanor said nothing. The library is his lordship's until 2 in the afternoon. After that, it is free. You may go into the garden, but you will return before sunset. And she stopped. Eleanor stopped as well. Mrs. Holt turned. Her eyes were hard, but there was something in them. Eleanor tried to read it. Pity? Warning? You will not speak to his lordship's guests, she said. If they address you, you will answer briefly. No one knows what you are doing here. That is his lordship's wish. No one knows. So Eleanor was here, and not here, without a name, without a place, neither servant nor lady, something else. Though what exactly, no one could say. I understand, Eleanor said. Mrs. Holt looked at her for a moment, then turned and continued walking. The room was on the 3rd floor. It was large, 3 times the size of her room at Whitmore Manor. There was wood laid in the fireplace. The bed was properly made, and from the window one could see the wet streets of Mayfair. Mrs. Holt paused at the door. If you require anything, you may ring. Thank you. The door closed. Eleanor set her case beside the bed. She did not open it. She did not sit. She went to the window, looked outside. A carriage passed, black, polished, drawn by 2 white horses. Mayfair's horses were like that, well fed, well kept. A horse costs more than that. Eleanor withdrew her finger from the glass. Very well, she thought. Very well. She took her first breakfast alone. The small sitting room, despite its name, was larger than any place Eleanor had ever eaten. A table for one plate, one glass. From the outside, it would appear elegant. From within, Eleanor knew, it was a division, a boundary drawn politely, enforced politely. You eat here, I eat there. The eggs were cold. Eleanor ate them. On the 2nd day, she went to the library. It was 2 o'clock, the hour Mrs. Holt had given. She opened the door, stepped inside, and stopped. Ashford was there, at his desk with a file. He did not see her, or pretended not to. Eleanor turned to leave, closed the door. She stopped. From the inside, Ashford said, still looking at the file. "There is a draft." Eleanor turned back, closed the door. From the inside, she walked to the shelves, to a distant corner, as quietly as possible, took a book, sat down. 5 minutes passed in silence. "What are you reading?" Eleanor glanced at the cover. "History." "Which period?" "Stuart." Ashford lifted his head from the file, looked at her, with that same measuring gaze. "Do country girls usually read Stuart history?" "I would not know," Eleanor said. "I am not from the country." A brief silence. "From London?" "My mother was." "Not Whitmore, then?" "No," Eleanor said. "Not Whitmore." Ashford watched her for a moment, then returned to his file. The conversation ended. Eleanor opened her book, but her hands were trembling. Whether from anger or something else, she did not know. On the third day, the guests arrived. Eleanor had not been told. No one had said anything. Returning from the garden that afternoon, she encountered 2 men in the entrance hall. In their 40s, well-dressed, whispering and laughing together. Eleanor stepped aside to pass. One of the men noticed her, stopped, looked her up and down, as one might inspect an object. "Who is this?" he asked, as though Eleanor could not hear. Not to his companion, but into the air. Ashford emerged from the far end of the hall. He saw the men, then Eleanor. He paused for a moment. "A distant relative," he said. His voice was flat, not explanatory, but dismissive. "Staying here temporarily." The man laughed. "Ashford, you never—" "The study is ready," Ashford said. "Come." They left. Eleanor remained alone in the hall. A distant relative. He had not said servant, not guest, not anything. A distant relative. Temporary. Eleanor walked to the stairs, went up. She closed the door to her room. This time she did not go to the window. She sat on the bed, folded her hands in her lap. Her mother had said something else. Eleanor remembered now. "Do not show your anger. If you hide it, it grows stronger." Eleanor took a slow breath. Very well, she thought. Very well. On the 4th day, Ashford had her summoned to the study. Mrs. Holt came to the door, said, "His lordship is waiting for you," and left. Eleanor went downstairs. Ashford was behind his desk. There was a paper before him, small, formal-looking. "Sit." Eleanor sat. "I wanted to clarify certain things about this house," Ashford said. He was not looking at the paper. He was looking at Eleanor. "Your presence here is limited to a specific period. Society must not see you. That is for your benefit as well as mine. By agreement, Whitmore's debt has been erased. In return, In return? What am I?" Ashford paused. Eleanor continued. Her voice did not tremble. Her eyes did not burn. She was only asking, "Am I a guest? A servant? A relative? Yesterday in the hall you said temporary. Mrs. Holt has forbidden me from entering the dining room. I was surprised that my reading Stuart history in the library surprised you. I do not know why it did, but it did. What is my place here, my lord?" Silence. Ashford leaned against the desk. He looked at her, this time differently. He was still measuring, but what he measured now was not the same. "You have a mind," he said at last. Yes, said Eleanor, and I eat cold eggs in the morning. Ashford's eyes narrowed for a moment, and then something happened that Eleanor had not expected in her lifetime. He smiled, small, almost imperceptible, but real. The eggs will be corrected, he said. He pushed the paper aside. As for your place, I have not yet decided. When will you? I may not. Eleanor rose, walked to the door. Whitmore, Ashford said behind her. She stopped. What is your surname? She turned, looked at him. Voss, she said, from my mother. She left. That night, Ashford remained in the study late. There were files on his desk. Business, important, waiting. He looked at none of them. Voss. He had heard that name somewhere. Where? A week passed. Eleanor now ate warm eggs in the mornings. Nothing else had changed. The house had a rhythm, like a clock, precise, intolerant of deviation. Ashford rose at 8, entered the study at 9, and did not leave until noon. In the afternoons, he sometimes went out, sometimes appeared in the library. In the evenings, guests came, not every night, but often enough. Eleanor lived around that rhythm. The library had indeed been opened to her. After 2, as promised. She could go into the garden. She ate in the small sitting room. She spoke to no one. No one spoke to her. It was not truly different from Whitmore Manor. She had not existed there either. She did not exist here. Only the quality of the loneliness had improved. Better furniture, quieter corridors. Eleanor allowed herself a brief laugh one morning, watching the rain through the window. Then the smile faded. Mother, she thought, where were you all those years? Where were you buried in this city? She did not know. Richard had not said. George did not know, or had not cared. Her mother had been born in London, had died in London, and yet her daughter did not know where she lay. This was the heaviest thing Eleanor carried, heavier than her case, heavier than her past. On Thursday evening, guests arrived. Eleanor knew it by the sound, the voices gathering in the hall, the laughter of men. Mrs. Holt's instructive tone. She remained in her room, opened her book. Then she remembered. She had to collect her laundry. The maid had said she would bring it in the afternoon, but had not. Eleanor did not want to go downstairs, but she had nothing clean to wear in the morning. She went. She used the service corridor, the one Mrs. Holt had shown her, the one guests never saw. She went to the laundry room, took her bundle, and returned. Just as she reached the top of the stairs, a voice came from behind her. Are you new? She turned. The man was in his 40s, well-dressed, holding a glass, clearly one of Ashford's guests. But what he was doing in this wing, Eleanor did not understand. His eyes moved over her, slowly, with an unpleasant slowness. Are you a servant? No. Then what? I am a guest. The man laughed. A guest of Ashford's? Which room are you staying in? Eleanor tightened her grip on the bundle. Good evening. Wait. The man stepped forward. I haven't seen you before. Newly arrived? Ashford didn't tell us. He does not have to. Why are you so— Leave her. That was not Eleanor's voice. They both turned. Ashford stood at the end of the corridor. His voice was low, not threatening, but commanding. Yet it filled the space. The man gave a strained laugh. "Ashford, I was only the guests are in the drawing room," Ashford said. "You will join them." The man paused for a moment, then turned and left. Silence remained. Eleanor looked at Ashford. Ashford looked at Eleanor. "Thank you," she said. Ashford shrugged. "Such things do not occur in my houses. In my houses. Not for her sake. For the house." Eleanor inclined her head, not in gratitude, but in acknowledgement. She turned and walked toward the stairs. "Voss." She stopped. "Do not use the service corridor. Use the guest staircase." Eleanor did not turn. "You said you were a guest," Ashford said, his voice slightly different now. "Explaining, not defending. Then behave as one." Eleanor said nothing. She climbed the stairs. When she entered her room, she set the bundle on the bed and stood still for a long time. Behave as a guest, which meant what? Leave the service corridor. Use the guest staircase. Very well. But the small sitting room? The band from the dining room? The distant relative? Temporary? Eleanor opened her wardrobe, hung her dresses. Ashford was James Ashford. He could be inconsistent. The powerful often were. Today a guest, tomorrow a burden. She knew that. And yet, on Friday morning the rain stopped. Eleanor went into the garden, for the first time to truly look, not merely to escape. It was large, faded in the gray light of November, yet still tended. No one was there. She walked along the gravel path, then the grass. Then she stopped. The rear wing of the house. Stone, old, its windows curtained. Mrs. Holt had said on the first day, "The old wing is not in use. Do not go there." The door was open. Perhaps the wind had done it. The hinge was loose. It was clear. No one had noticed. Eleanor paused. She turned, looked at the garden. No one. She looked at the door. She went inside. The old wing was cold. The cold of unused rooms, the weight of still air. There was dust in the corridor, but not disorderly, as though it had been carefully closed years ago and never opened again. Eleanor walked slowly. The doors were shut. She opened none of them. She reached the end of the corridor. There was a single door there, different from the others, larger, heavier, and slightly ajar. Eleanor entered. The room had once been a sitting room. Covered furniture, shuttered windows, a carpet faded by years, and on the wall, a portrait, large, oil-painted, in a gilded frame. Eleanor looked. A young woman, early 20s, fair hair, straight shoulders, that familiar posture, dark eyes, a calm gaze, but with something within it, something like knowledge, like resolve. Eleanor felt her heartbeat, not in her chest, but in her throat. She knew that face, the face she had tried to forget since she was 8, blurred yet never gone. Mother. She could not breathe. She stepped forward, another step, stood before the portrait and looked, for a long time, without moving. She looked at her mother's youth. at her mother in this house, on this wall, in this frame, in this room. What are you doing here? She turned. Ashford stood in the doorway. His face was different. Eleanor saw it at once. Not that cold, calculating expression. There was something beneath it, something he was trying to control. Shock? Anger? Eleanor could not speak. Ashford stepped inside, came toward her slowly, stood beside her, looked at the portrait. A long silence passed. Then his voice lowered. The arrogance gone. The distance gone. Do you know this woman? Eleanor's throat tightened. My mother, she said. Ashford did not turn. He kept looking at the portrait. And Eleanor, abandoning 19 years of composure, tried to read what she saw in his face. Was it regret? Was it grief? Or the answer to a question he had carried for years? What was her name? Ashford said, still looking at the portrait. Clara, Eleanor said. Clara Voss. Ashford's jaw tightened. Clara, he repeated, as if speaking the name aloud made it real. He turned, looked at Eleanor, and for the first time, Eleanor saw that what looked back at her from the eyes of James Ashford was not arrogance. Ashford did not leave the room, nor did Eleanor. They stood before the portrait, 2 steps apart, years between them. From the outside, they would have looked like strangers. From within, Eleanor did not know. She could not see within. Ashford did not speak at once. That was his way. Eleanor had learned it in a week. He weighed what he would say, measured it, then opened his mouth. Words seemed to cost him something. Eleanor waited. How old are you? Ashford said at last. 19. Ashford inclined his head, as if calculating. When did your mother die? When I was 8. 1832. Was it November? Eleanor turned, looked at Ashford. Yes, she said slowly. How do you know? Ashford did not answer. He walked toward the portrait, past Eleanor without pausing, only a step beyond her. He stood beneath it, looked at the corner of the frame. There was something there, small, carved. Eleanor had not noticed it before. He bent, read it. CV, 1821. Her mother's initials, and a year, the year her mother had been 20. Who commissioned this portrait? Eleanor asked. Ashford turned, looked at her. My father. Silence filled the room. Eleanor looked at the portrait, then at Ashford, then back at the portrait. Her mother's face had not changed. That calm gaze, those straight shoulders. But now Eleanor saw her differently. This portrait was a memory, one someone had wanted to keep, yet could not discard. Your father, Eleanor said. Her voice was level. Was my mother in this house? Yes. As a guest? Ashford paused for a moment. At first, Eleanor waited. Ashford walked across the room, toward the window, shuttered, closed. He turned his back. Then he spoke. My father lost our mother in 1819. I was 12. The house, for months, lost its function. The servants remained, but it ceased to be a home. My father did not leave his study. He stopped. In 1821, your mother arrived, at the recommendation of a friend, a music teacher, piano. She was to give me lessons. Eleanor listened. She did not speak. She was a young woman, alone, independent, unusual for the time. My father noticed her on the first day. So did I, though I was 14, and what I noticed was different. A brief silence. He almost smiled, but did not. Your mother was a cheerful woman. She brought life into this house, the kind it had not known for a long time. My father revived. I revived. She remained here for 2 years. And then, Eleanor said. Ashford turned, moved away from the window. Then my father proposed marriage. Your mother refused. Eleanor drew a breath. Why? She did not say. Not to my father either. She simply left. One morning, with her cases. The only thing she left behind was a letter, a short one. My father never showed it to me, but I saw it once, by accident. What did it say? Ashford looked at Eleanor. She apologized. And one more thing. Some doors should not be left open, she wrote. Silence. Eleanor thought of the brooch in her palm. Silver. The letter V. The only thing her mother had left her. Some doors should not be left open. She knew her mother, as much as one could know in 8 years. And in those 8 years, she remembered a woman who had never regretted, never looked back. Why had she refused? Why had she chosen Richard Whitmore? Why had she left this house, this man, this life? She did not know. Perhaps she never would. What did your father do afterward? Eleanor asked. He waited, Ashford said, for a long time. Then, someone else. But this portrait never left this room. My father would not allow it, nor would I. Why? Ashford looked at her. Because for those 2 years, this house was a home. It was not before. It was not after. Eleanor remained silent for a long time. Outside, the wind moved. The windows of the old wing trembled faintly, at intervals. Then Eleanor asked. She did not want to ask, but she could not leave this room without asking. My mother died in 1832, she said. November. Smallpox. London was very bad that year. It began in the poorer districts and spread. Ours was not a wealthy neighborhood. She paused. The doctor came too late. Richard, my stepfather, did not act quickly enough to send for him. Or perhaps he did not wish to. I never knew which. Her voice did not tremble. Her eyes did not burn. She was simply stating it, a fact, spoken aloud for the first time after carrying it for so long. I was 8. I sat beside her until morning. No one came. Ashford did not move. Eleanor continued, "Where were you?" Ashford's face tightened. "I did not know," he said. His voice was low. "I was not informed." "You were not informed?" "Your mother had severed the connection. We did not know her address. My father searched the first year. He did not find her. And you stopped searching?" "Yes." Eleanor lowered her head. "Very well," she said. She turned, walked toward the door. "Voss." She stopped, did not turn. "I said you have a mind," Ashford said. His voice was different now. The arrogance still absent, but something else had taken its place. something heavier. And you are your mother's daughter. Had I known. What would you have done? Eleanor said. She still had not turned. Raise the price? Silence. A long, heavy silence. Eleanor opened the door, left. She stopped in the corridor. The cold air of the old wing struck her face. She clenched her hands into fists, released them, clenched them again. My mother refused you, she thought. And years later, you bought me for 500 pounds. Her eyes burned. She did not close them. If she did, she would cry. And she did not yet have the time for that. She walked, reached the stairs, went up, entered her room, closed the door. She went to the window, looked outside. The streets of Mayfair, wet stone, passing carriages. Mother, she thought, why did you leave? No answer came. None ever would. But now, at least, she knew one thing. Her mother had left this house, this man's father, this life, by choice, for something, or to escape something. And now Eleanor was here, not by choice. It is not fair, she thought, then corrected herself. It has never been fair. Why should it be now? That evening Mrs. Holt came to the door. His lordship requests that you come down to dinner. Eleanor turned, looked at her. The dining room? The dining room. The table was long, set for 6, though only 2 were seated. Ashford at the head, Eleanor at his right. 4 empty chairs between them. Dinner was served. Soup, bread, meat. It was warm. Eleanor ate. Ashford ate as well. They did not speak, but this silence was different from the silence of the small sitting room. That had been the silence of isolation. This was something else. Eleanor could not yet name it. When dessert arrived, Ashford spoke. I want to know what Whitmore did to you. Eleanor did not set down her spoon. Why? Because I need to know. Why? She repeated. Ashford looked at her. Because I want to set certain things right. Eleanor set her spoon down, placed it on the table, precisely, quietly. It cannot be set right, she said. Some things can. Eleanor rose. Ashford did not. He only watched. Good night, my lord. She left. As she climbed the stairs, no voice called after her. But when she reached her room, closed the door, and sat on the bed, she realized something for the first time. Ashford, James. Ashford had looked at her 3 times today, and each time there had been something different in his eyes, not arrogance, the look of a man who has lost something. Eleanor did not know what to do with that. Not yet. Richard Whitmore's troubles began on a Tuesday morning. First came the letter from the club, the Pall Mall Club, of which he had been a member for many years, one of London's most established gentlemen's clubs, the kind that required the right name and the right connections to enter, informed him, in polite but decisive language, that his membership had been terminated. No reason was given, nor would it have been. In such clubs, to ask for a reason was to reveal that one did not understand why. Richard read the letter 3 times. On the 4th, he tore it apart. On Thursday, his business partner came, Hammond and Whitmore Trading Company. Equal on paper, In truth, a union of Hammond's capital and Whitmore's name. Hammond, a man in his 50s, cautious, fond of numbers, sat across from him, removed his gloves, and looked at him. "I wish to dissolve the partnership," he said. Richard leaned forward. "Hammond, what? I am not initiating legal proceedings. I will buy your share, at value, a clean separation." "Why?" Hammond put his gloves back on. "Certain names are no longer advantageous to be associated with." He stood, left. Richard remained at his desk for a long time. Certain names. On Saturday, George came. He knocked sharply, entered, his face pale. "Father, Bryce, my creditor Bryce, has transferred the debt." "To whom?" "I don't know. A solicitor came, brought papers. The debt is now in someone else's hands." "They did not say who." "They did not, but—" George sat, placed his hands on the desk. "The new holder has not yet made any demand. Nothing at all. Only informed us of the transfer." Richard looked out the window. London was gray as always. The club, Hammond, George's debt. They appeared separate. They were not. Richard had lived long enough to know that. "Ashford," he said. George froze. "What?" Richard did not answer. Eleanor knew nothing of this. She knew nothing because Ashford had told her nothing. The days passed in the house. Dinner now every evening for the two of them. Still quiet, but no longer as cold as in that first week. The library was shared. The garden was hers. Ashford remained distant, still measuring, still observing. But that easy arrogance, the kind that could say a horse costs more than you, was gone, or Eleanor no longer saw it. Perhaps she did not wish to see it. The change began at a dinner. Ashford sat. The meal was served, and for the first half hour he said nothing. Eleanor did not speak either. Then Ashford asked, "What did you do aside from reading?" Eleanor did not set down her spoon. "When?" "At Whitmore." "Household work. What does that include?" "Cooking, cleaning, accounts." She paused. Richard's accounts. He did not wish to employ a trained accountant for his own affairs. "You know accounting?" "Yes." Ashford looked at her for a moment. "Are you good?" For the first time, Eleanor felt something. Not quite a smile, but close to it. Richard never complained. Richard did not hesitate to complain. Ashford inclined his head, returned to his meal. The conversation ended. But that night, before she slept, Eleanor realized, for the first time, Ashford had asked her something, not about the rules of the house, not a command, about her. She heard the news from Mrs. Holt, a week later, in the morning. A maid had dropped a tray while bringing tea. There had been noise, commotion. Eleanor had stepped into the corridor. Mrs. Holt, gathering the pieces, muttered to herself, not seeing Eleanor. "Whitmore's affairs have collapsed, I hear. Hammond has withdrawn. They've expelled him from the club as well. What on earth did the man do? Angering Ashford is no small matter." She stopped, saw Eleanor. They looked at one another. Mrs. Holt bowed slightly, gathering the shards. "Good morning, Miss Voss." She left. Eleanor remained. That day she did not go down to the library. She sat in her room, thought, the club, Hammond, George's debt, Ashford. I want to set certain things right, he had said. Eleanor had risen then, had left. She had not wanted to hear it. But now, she stood. Ashford was in the study. Eleanor, shocked, entered and closed the door behind her. Ashford stood at his desk with a file. He lifted his head. His expression did not change. Sit. I will not sit. His brows rose slightly. He waited. Eleanor remained standing before the desk. She looked at him, level, calm, with that familiar gaze. Was it you who did this to Richard? Ashford did not answer. The club, Hammond, George's debt. She paused. Was it you? Ashford closed the file, placed it on the desk. Yes. Eleanor drew a breath. Why? I told you. To set things right, yes. Her voice was not sharp. It was cold. Are you doing it for me or for your conscience? Silence. Ashford rose, walked around the desk, not toward her, but toward the window. He turned his back. Are the two separate? He said. It matters to me. Why? Eleanor stepped forward. Because, she said, if you are doing this for your conscience, not as the man who bought a daughter for £500, but as the man who owes Clara Voss a debt, then I leave it to you. That is between you and my mother. It does not concern me. She paused. But if you are doing it for me... Ashford turned. Eleanor continued. If you are doing it for me, then you should know this. My account is mine. I have carried it for 19 years, not to place it in another's hands. Ashford looked at her for a long time. You are both the same, he said at last. Who? You and your mother. The same look, the same bearing. He paused. She said the same thing to my father. My account is mine. Eleanor felt nothing, or tried not to. And what did your father do? He listened, and still acted, without her seeing, without her knowing. So so I, Ashford said. His voice was level. As you see. Eleanor looked at the desk, at the file, then at Ashford. Does Richard know? He will not. George? I hold his debt. I have not yet made any demand. Will you? I will not, he paused. Or if I do, I will ask you first. Eleanor had not expected that. It did not show on her face, but she had not expected it. You will ask me? Your account, Ashford said. You said so. Eleanor left the room. She stopped in the corridor, looked at her hands. Not trembling, not damp, calm. But something moved within her. Something small, something deep, something she could not name. He will ask me. For 19 years, no one had asked her. Richard decided and executed. George asked, Eleanor provided. The servant woman, the accounting girl, the invisible presence. And now a man who had bought her for £500 for the price of a horse was saying, I will ask you first. It did not make her happy. Or rather, should it have? Eleanor walked, reached the stairs. My mother refused you, she thought. Likely refused your father's kindness as well. Why? Because some doors should not be left open. Eleanor climbed the stairs, entered her room, went to the window, looked outside. London was gray, wet, restless, and Eleanor Voss, her mother's daughter, for the first time in 19 years, thought this: could my mother have been wrong? She erased the thought at once. Not yet. Too soon. Late that night, after the house had fallen silent, Ashford sat alone in the study. On the desk lay a single thing: an old, yellowed, small sheet of paper, Clara Voss's letter. His father had given it to him as he was dying. Perhaps one day it will be of use, he had said, without explaining what he meant. Ashford had read it a few times over the years. Each time, he had put it away. Tonight he opened it. Some doors should not be left open. This house is very beautiful. This family very kind. But I do not belong here. And to remain where I do not belong, to desire what is not mine, would harm us both. Do not look for me. I will be happy. It is enough that you know this. Ashford folded the paper. I will be happy. She had not been. At least, from what Eleanor had said, that was clear. Richard Whitmore, £500, an 8-year-old girl left alone. I will be happy. And Ashford's family had stopped searching. He placed the paper back into the drawer, closed it. Your account is yours, Eleanor had said. Very well, Ashford thought. But I am here as well. Richard Whitmore arrived at Ashford House on a Wednesday morning, without notice. In London, this was not done. Not at the door of a duke. One sent a card first, arranged an appointment, waited for the proper day. Everyone knew these rules. Richard knew them as well. But Richard was now a man expelled from his club, abandoned by his partner, with his son's debt in unknown hands. Such men did not observe rules. Eleanor was in the garden. November had passed. December had begun. The air sharper still, yet Eleanor continued to go out. Not to walk, but to think. She could no longer think inside the house. Every corridor carried a voice, every room a memory. In the garden, there was only the wind. She did not see the carriage. She heard it. Wheels on gravel, the breath of horses. She turned. She recognized it. Richard Whitmore's carriage. Black, old, once impressive. Eleanor did not move. Richard stepped down, walked toward the house, did not see her, or chose not to. The door opened. He entered. Eleanor remained in the garden. Her hands had gone cold. She had not noticed. Inside, Mrs. Holt informed Ashford. Ashford was in the study. When he heard, he paused. Did not put down his pen. Did not close his file. Send him in. Mrs. Holt turned. My lord, without appointment, send him in, he repeated. When Richard entered, Ashford was still behind his desk. He did not rise. Richard stopped at the door. He held his hat. One did not hold a hat indoors, but he had not set it down. A small detail. Those who felt uncertain occupied their hands. My lord, Richard said, my apologies for taking your time. Ashford waited. Richard stepped in, sat, uninvited. Ashford noted it. "We must speak," Richard said. "About the girl." "Which girl?" A brief silence. Richard smiled. That calculating, measuring smile. "Eleanor." "Go on." Richard placed the hat on his knee. "We had an agreement. In exchange for the debt's erasure, I brought the girl. That part I fulfilled." "You did. But the continuation of the agreement remains unclear. How long will she remain here? When will she return?" "She will not return." Richard paused. "My lord, you heard me." Richard tapped his foot, lightly, controlled. "My lord, the girl is under my guardianship. Legally, she is 19, Ashford said. "Under English law, you have no guardianship. But morality, Ashford said, his voice so flat that Richard could not finish the sentence, "is not a word I wish to hear from you." Silence. Richard turned his hat in his hands. "I understand, but I am in a difficult position. My partnership has dissolved. Certain connections have unexpectedly severed. My son has debts. The new holder has not yet." "I know." Richard looked at him. "I know all of it," Ashford said, "because I did all of it." Silence filled the room. Richard's face changed. Color draining, returning, draining again. His hat slipped from his knee. He picked it up, let it fall again. "You, I, why?" Ashford leaned on the desk, looked at him. Long, calm, assessing. "I knew Clara Voss," he said. "My family knew her. You know what you did to her." Richard's jaw tightened. That woman made her own choices. Silence. Richard fell silent. "I continue," Ashford said. "You brought her daughter for £500 in exchange for your debt. Very well. I accepted the agreement. But now, what exactly is it you want from me?" Richard gathered himself. "My son's debt. The new holder would not say who he was. It is mine. If you would erase it, or defer it, arrange installments, in exchange?" Richard hesitated. His voice lowered. "Eleanor may remain here, for as long as you wish." The room froze. Ashford did not move. "You are using the girl as a bargaining instrument," he said. His voice remained level, but something within it had tightened. "I am only—" "Leave." Richard stood, waited, perhaps for more, perhaps for permission to speak again. Ashford said nothing. Richard left. Eleanor was in her room. She saw Richard's carriage leave from the window, black, old, moving away slowly. Richard was inside. She could not see him, but she knew. Why had he come? What had he wanted? And why had Ashford allowed him in? Without notice, without appointment, this man. At dinner, Ashford came late. Eleanor had already taken her seat before the service began. When he entered, she looked at him, searching his face for something. A clue, an explanation, something. There was nothing. That same flat expression. The meal was served. Soup. Eleanor took a spoonful, set it down. Richard was here today. Ashford lifted his head. Yes. Why? To speak. About what? Ashford looked at her for a moment. His son's debt. And you. Me. Eleanor set her spoon down. What did he want? It does not matter. If I was discussed, it matters. Ashford set his fork down, turned fully toward her. He asked me to defer the debt. In exchange, he offered that you remain here. Eleanor did not move. 1 second. 2. He offered, she repeated. So I am still a bargaining piece. No. And you listened. Her voice did not tremble, did not break, but something within it, something stored, compressed, hidden for 19 years, was moving. He came without appointment. You let him in. You listened. I dismissed him, but you listened first. Ashford did not answer. Eleanor stood. She pushed the chair back, not violently, but with control. 500 pounds, she said. A horse costs more than that, you said. And now my stepfather finds you and, through you, still trades me. Eleanor. It was the first time he had spoken her name. Eleanor stopped. Ashford rose. He did not move toward her, but remained where he was, keeping the distance, yet his voice had changed. The coldness was gone. I listened to Richard because I wanted to know what he wanted, how far he would go, before I sent him away. Why did you need to know? I do not act without knowing. That is not an answer. No, Ashford said. It is not. Silence. Eleanor looked at this table. The cooling soup, the untouched bread. Then at Ashford. Did he use me to trap you, she said. Richard, to build something with you, placing me in the middle. Yes. And you, I said no. But he will come again. Yes. And you will listen again. Ashford took a step, a single step, past the edge of the table, slightly closer. Eleanor, he stopped, his voice lowered. I want to ask you something, and I want an honest answer. Eleanor waited. Do you wish to remain here? The room was silent. Outside, the wind moved. December wind, wet and sharp. Eleanor looked at Ashford for a long time, with that same measuring, searching gaze. But this time, what she sought was different. You are 19 years too late to ask that question, she said. She turned, left. Ashford returned to the table. He sat, looked at his soup. It had gone cold. You are 19 years too late. They had been too late for her mother as well. They had told his father too. Do not stop searching. Try again. His father had stopped, because Clara Voss had said it plainly. Do not look for me. And now her daughter was here. The same gaze, the same shoulders, the same guarded silence. But Eleanor Voss was not telling anyone, do not look for me. She was only waiting. Perhaps she did not even know what she was waiting for. Ashford knew. At midnight, Eleanor could not sleep. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The wind rattled the windows. Do you wish to remain here? She had not answered. She had said 19 years too late and walked out. That was an answer. But was it the right one? Did she wish to stay? She did not wish to return to Whitmore Manor. That much she knew. But to remain here. This was Ashford's house. Ashford's rules, Ashford's life. What was Eleanor within that life? She still did not know. She turned, buried her face in the pillow. She thought of her mother, young, 20 in this house. Piano lessons. She had brought life into it, Ashford had said, revived them all. And then she had left. Some doors should not be left open. Why, Mother? Eleanor thought. Truly, why? There was no answer. There never had been. But tonight, in the December wind, in that moment, when Ashford had accepted without protest that he was 19 years too late, Eleanor thought her mother might have been afraid, not of staying, of beginning to want. On Thursday morning, Eleanor went to the market. It was her habit, once a week, early in the morning. Mrs. Holt had offered to send a maid. Eleanor had refused. She wanted to go out. On her own feet, in her own direction, alone. She walked from Mayfair to Oxford Street. 15 minutes, crowded, loud, alive. London breathed there. Eleanor did as well. That morning the air was clear, rare for December, cold but bright. Eleanor wrapped her shawl, took her basket and left. The crowd began as she entered Oxford Street. Vendors, carriages, children, ladies. London's chaotic, unmeasured energy. Eleanor liked it. After the dead silence of Whitmore Manor, this noise felt like life. She stopped at a fruit stall, looked at apples, winter apples, small and hard. She bought them. Eleanor, she froze. She knew the voice. She turned. It was George, and beside him, Richard. George looked unwell, red eyes, unshaven, coat unbuttoned. The last time she had seen him was at Whitmore Manor, that night outside the study door. 500 pounds. Father, 500 pounds. Richard looked as he always did, well-dressed, composed. Nothing touched him outwardly. That was his strength, or what he believed to be strength. What a surprise, Eleanor said. Her voice was flat. She knew it was no surprise, no coincidence. They had followed the house, or her. Thursday mornings on Oxford Street. Who had told them? A servant? Or merely chance? It did not matter. We need to speak, Richard said. No. Eleanor. No, she repeated. She hooked the basket over her arm. You have said everything you wished to say to Ashford. He conveyed it to me. If there is nothing else, George's voice, low, broken. Eleanor stopped. George stepped forward. His eyes were truly red, sleepless, or from crying. George cried. Eleanor knew this. Weak, inconsistent. But when he cried, it was real. I'm sorry. Eleanor looked at him. I know what I did. My debt. Father used you and I let him. I didn't stop it. I know that. George, but now everything is falling apart. Father's affairs are finished. We may have to leave the house. His voice broke. I don't know what to do. The crowd flowed around them. No one looked. In London, everyone had enough of their own burdens. Eleanor looked at George. When she had lost her mother at 8, George had been 11. He had cried that night. Truly cried, Eleanor remembered. He had not loved her mother, but he had feared death. feared being alone. Eleanor had comforted him that night. At 8 years old, having lost her own mother, she had comforted George. She remembered that. "George," Eleanor said. Her voice had not softened, but it had not hardened either. "I hear you." George's eyes filled. "But," Eleanor said, "this is not my problem." George's face fell. 19 years, Eleanor said. "For 19 years I carried everything. Accounts, house, meals, silence. After my mother died, no one asked me, 'How are you? What do you want? What do you need?' No one, not even you." George tried to speak, could not. "Now you are in difficulty. I see that. But my return does not solve it. It only returns me to that house." Richard intervened. His voice was low, controlled. "What does Ashford think you are here? A guest? You are deceiving yourself, Eleanor. These men—" "Whitmore." All three turned. Ashford stood there, alone. No carriage, no servant. His coat was black, no hat. He must have walked or left his carriage nearby. He was not looking at Eleanor. He was looking at Richard. And Eleanor saw something in James Ashford's face she had never seen before. Anger. Not cold, contained, compressed, but real. Not in his eyes, but in his jaw, his shoulders, a tension she could not fully name. Richard did not step back, but he wanted to. Eleanor saw it. "My lord," Richard said, "we were only—" "I know what you were doing." Ashford glanced at Eleanor. Quick, brief, a check, then back to Richard. "I told you to leave the house," he said. "Now I tell you not to approach Miss Voss anywhere in this city. Legally, you cannot." "Legally," Ashford said, his voice so low Richard could not complete the sentence. "I am the holder of George Whitmore's debt. I may call it in full tomorrow morning. He cannot pay. Debtor's prison, Marshalsea, you are familiar with it, is not pleasant in this season." George drew in a breath. Richard's face turned to stone. "Is that a threat?" "No," Ashford said. "If it were a threat, I would have acted already. This is information." Silence. Oxford Street continued around them. Carriages, vendors, footsteps. The world did not care. Richard adjusted his hat, looked at George. George stared at the ground. "We are leaving," Richard said. George looked at Eleanor. For a moment, only a moment, something was in his eyes. Apology? Farewell? Then he turned, left. Richard walked without looking back. The crowd swallowed them. Eleanor did not move. Ashford stepped beside her, not shoulder to shoulder. A pace apart, he looked at the crowd, not at her. The silence stretched. Eleanor spoke. "You followed me." "Yes." "Why?" Ashford paused. "I knew Richard would make another move. I believed he would come to you directly. And I was right." Eleanor held the basket with both hands, tightly. The apples shifted softly inside. "You were angry," she said. Ashford did not answer. "When you saw him, Richard, you were angry." "Eleanor, it is the first time I have seen that in you." She paused. "You lost control. Almost." Ashford turned, looked at her, and this time Eleanor did not look away. She held his gaze. "Yes," Ashford said. A single word. Low, level. "Why?" A long silence. The wind passed between them. Cold, December wind. "Because," Ashford said, "to see you standing alone before that man, in front of a fruit stall on Oxford Street." He stopped. "I do not want that." Eleanor drew a breath. "What do you not want?" "I do not want to see you alone, before that man, before anyone." The crowd moved around them. Eleanor looked at Ashford. At that face, always controlled, always calculating. Now it was different, less layered, more open. It unsettled her, because the wall worked best against coldness. Pride was easy to oppose, easy to reject. But this was different. "Ashford," Eleanor said. "James." She paused. "My name is James," he said. "You do not have to call me Ashford anymore." Silence. Long, heavy, filled. Eleanor slipped the basket over her arm. "Let us return to the house," she said. "It is getting cold." She turned and walked. Ashford, James, remained where he was for a second, then walked beside her. The two of them, side by side on Oxford Street, without touching. Eleanor felt something crack within her. A small crack, almost silent, but light was entering through it. When they returned, Mrs. Holt was waiting at the door. Her face revealed nothing, but her eyes had seen everything, Eleanor knew. Eleanor entered, removed her shawl. "Miss Voss." She turned. James stood at the door. He had not yet come in. "This evening in the dining room," he said, "there is something I wish to tell you." "About what?" "About your mother. The last thing I know." Eleanor looked at him. "Very well," she said. James entered. The door closed. Eleanor went upstairs. She set the basket on the table. The apples rolled. One fell to the floor. She picked it up, held it in her hand. James. She had not spoken the name. She could not yet, but she had heard it, and the light entering through that crack. Eleanor tried to extinguish it as always. "Your mother was afraid of beginning to want. You must be afraid as well." But this time, that voice came from farther away, weaker. Eleanor set the apple down. Outside, London was turning gray. Evening fell early in winter. Soon the street lamps would be lit, one by one, house by house, street by street. Eleanor adjusted her hair, straightened her dress. It was still early to go down, but for the first time in 19 years, she did not want to wait. Dinner began at 8. Candlelight, 2 plates, 2 glasses. Mrs. Holt had served and left. As she closed the door, she gave Eleanor a single look. What that look meant, Eleanor could not tell. James sat at the head, Eleanor at his right, their usual places. The soup came, went. The bread came, went. No one spoke. Eleanor waited. James would speak when he chose. She had learned that. He weighed, measured, then opened his mouth. Words cost him. Tonight they seemed to cost more than ever. When the meat was served, James set his knife down. In November 1832, he said, 3 weeks before your mother fell ill, she wrote to us. Eleanor did not move. To my father. It was a short letter. She did not give an address, but we traced it through the post office. It had been sent from Southwark. Southwark! Eleanor's voice was level. That is where we lived. We know. My father sent a man immediately. But at that time, the epidemic had begun in London. Roads were closed. Some districts quarantined. The man returned. He said, I cannot pass. Silence. My father sent a second man. 3 days later, he returned as well. There are too many ill in Southwark. I could not find the woman, he said. Eleanor looked at the table. The candle flame trembled. There was no wind, yet it trembled. He did not send a third man, Eleanor said. He did, James said. Eleanor looked up. He went himself. Silence filled the room. Eleanor could not breathe. For a moment, only a moment. My father went to Southwark, James said. It was early December. The epidemic was at its height. I was 24. He left me here. I will return in a week, he said. Did he? He returned in 2. James leaned on the table. He had fallen ill. It was mild, but he was weakened for months. Did he find my mother? Silence. James looked at her. Yes. Eleanor's hands tightened beneath the table. When? When he arrived, 2 days had already passed. The neighbors told him, the Voss woman is dead. She has a daughter, small Thesidua. They said. Eleanor closed her eyes, opened them. Did he look for me? He did, James said. His voice had lowered. The neighbors said, the girl is with her stepfather. My father went to that address. To Richard's house? Yes. He knocked. Richard answered. Eleanor waited. Her heart was no longer in her chest, but in her throat. What did Richard say? James paused. The girl is with me. I take good care of her. You may leave, he said. And my father was ill, exhausted. Winter in London. Richard closed the door. And your father? He returned. He fell ill. I do not remember that period clearly. It was chaotic. But I remember one thing. He paused. When he recovered, he told me, the girl is there, he said, in Whitmore's house. But Whitmore will not give her up. I said, legal action. My father said, there is no guardianship. The girl is 10. Richard has not even formalized adoption, but he holds her in fact. And then my father tried for 2 more years. Legal, informal, every way. Each time Richard prevented it. Either he closed the door or he did not show you. Once he said the girl is ill. Once the girl is not in the city. Eleanor looked at the table. She had been 12. At 12, in Whitmore Manor, she was keeping Richard's account books. No one had knocked. Or they had. Once she remembered. Was she 10? 11? There had been a knock. Richard had answered. Voices. Then the door had closed. Richard had come inside, face like stone, and said, there was no one. Eleanor had believed him then. What else could she have done? Her eyes burned. This time she did not close them. She did not try to. A tear fell, not onto the table, but into her hand, into her palm. It was warm. James stood. Eleanor did not. She could not. James walked around the table, came beside her, not too close, a step apart. Then he knelt, not on a chair, but on one knee level with her. Eleanor. She looked at him. Her eyes were full, not falling, but full, and she no longer hid it. What she had concealed for 19 years would not stay hidden before this man, this table, this candlelight. "Your father," she said. Her voice trembled. She steadied it. "Why did he not tell me this? Why did you not tell me?" "Because we did not know where you were. Richard never gave an address. You grew up, Time passed. And then my father died. In 1840. He told me one thing: find Clara's daughter. Apologize to her." Eleanor felt something, not a breaking, but the opposite, something settling into place, a piece long missing. No one came, no one searched, no one wanted, now completed, wrong, painful, late, but real. £500, Eleanor said. Her voice no longer trembled. "You bought me for £500. Was that your apology?" James's face tightened. "No," he said. When Whitmore came that day, I did not know who you were. He gave your name and when I heard Voss, I thought of my mother's name, but I was not certain. When I saw you resembled her, but I was not sure. The portrait, yes." He paused. "Until that moment, I saw you as an arrangement. I do not deny it. At the price of a horse. Yes." Silence. "I am sorry," James said. Plain, brief, 2 words. No defense, no explanation, no softening. Eleanor looked at him. "That is not enough," she said. "I know. It may never be enough. I know. And yet you said it." "Yes." The candle flickered. Eleanor wiped her eyes quickly, in a single motion. She stood. James stood as well. For a moment they remained there, 2 steps apart, candlelight, a December night. "Why did my mother leave?" Eleanor said. "Truly, your father proposed. She left. Why?" James considered. "My father was wealthy, titled, a widower. Your mother was young, alone, without means. At that time, such a marriage would be spoken of. Your mother's past would be questioned, her motives questioned. Perhaps she knew that. They would say she married for his fortune. Yes, and she left to spare him that burden." James did not answer, but the tension in his face was answer enough. Eleanor lowered her head. Some doors should not be left open. She understood her mother, for the first time, fully. She had left because she loved, not thinking of herself, but of him. She had abandoned this house, this man, this life because remaining would harm him. And now Eleanor was here, in the same house, the same walls, the same candlelight, but in a different story. "Good night," Eleanor said. She turned. "Eleanor," she stopped. "Tomorrow," James said, "if you wish, we can find your mother's grave. It should be in the Southwark records. If—" Eleanor turned. Her face was open. The walls, the layers, the 19 years of armor, all still there. But now the cracks were visible, and the light entering through them. She was no longer extinguishing it. "Yes," she said, "I wish to." Midnight. The house was silent. Eleanor had not gone to bed. She knew it was not possible, not from exhaustion, but the opposite. Something within her had awakened, not because she had stayed awake for hours, but because she had slept too long. She rose. She did not pin her hair. She took a shawl, draped it over her shoulders. She went downstairs. Light seeped from beneath the library door. Eleanor paused. She knocked, waited. "Come in." She entered. James was by the fireplace, seated, with a book, but the book was closed, resting on his knee. He was not reading. He was thinking. He stood when he saw her. "Is something—" "No," Eleanor said. "Everything is well." James waited. Eleanor stepped inside, walked toward the fire, not directly beside him, but a step away. She looked at the flames. "I could not sleep," she said, "nor could I." Silence. But this silence was different. Not the frozen silence of the first week, nor the measured silence of the dining table. This was full. It carried something within it, something that knew its own weight. "James," Eleanor said. It was the first time she spoke his name, of her own will, in her own voice. James turned. Eleanor turned as well. They looked at one another. The measuring, assessing gazes were gone. Only two people remained, in candlelight, late at night, after a very long road. "My mother was right," Eleanor said. "Some doors should not be left open." James's face tightened. "But," Eleanor said, "some must be opened." James took a step. Eleanor did not remain still, not to retreat, but to meet him. And in the library of Ashford House, on a December night, in the light of the fire, James Ashford took Eleanor Voss's hand, for the first time, only her hand, nothing more. But the wall Eleanor had built for 19 years, stone by stone, year by year, anger by anger, collapsed silently, completely. London, March 1844. Spring had been delayed. Snow had fallen until the end of February. But in the first week of March, the sun appeared, weak, pale, but real. Southwark Cemetery was empty in the early morning. Eleanor stood before the grave. The stone was small. James had found it through the records. Upon it, only a name and dates. Clara Voss, 1801 to 1832. Eleanor had brought flowers, white, winter flowers, the kind one could find in London at that season. She knelt, placed them before the stone. "I found you," she said. Her voice trembled. She did not correct it. "It is late, but I found you." The wind passed. Eleanor stood. James stood 2 steps behind, present, but not approaching. This was Eleanor's moment. He knew it. She turned to him. James looked at her. With that gaze she now knew. No arrogance, no distance, only him. "Are you ready?" he said. "Yes," Eleanor said. She walked to him. James extended his hand. In the open, in the street, in the heart of London, regardless of who might see. Eleanor looked at that hand for a moment. Then she took it. 3 weeks later, a small ceremony was held at Ashford House. Society was not invited. Mrs. Holt wept. She would claim she never did, but she wept. The servants stood in a line. James married Eleanor Voss. Society spoke of it for a long time. Who is this girl? Where did she come from? Why Ashford? What was said was said. What was whispered was whispered. Eleanor did not care. James did not care. On their first morning together, before sunrise, while the house still slept, Eleanor went down to the library. James was there. As he was every morning, Eleanor sat in the chair, by the fire, in her usual place. James closed his book, looked at her. "What are you reading?" he said. Eleanor showed him the cover. Stuart. James laughed. Real, unrestrained, the kind Eleanor had come to value. Still that period? "I did not wish to leave it unfinished," Eleanor said. "I wished to finish where I began." James said nothing, but he looked at her. With that look she now knew well. And Eleanor Voss, her mother's daughter, bearer of 19 years of solitude, worth £500, smiled. Small, unrestrained, real. In that moment, she resembled her mother. James did not say it, but Eleanor saw it in his face. And this time, in this house, in the light of that morning, that resemblance was not sorrow. It was a continuation. Thank you for following the story all the way to the end. Don't forget to let us know in the comments which city you're listening from. We always enjoy seeing where our listeners are around the world. If you like the story, we truly appreciate you subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us keep bringing you more stories like this.